Chapter 801, The Ninth Heavenly King. Today, Lu Shu did not make any lame jokes. He simply prepared to teach. It was as if he felt that this was a very formal occasion. He had to be serious as well. He had been a teacher for more than a month, but he had never taken his position seriously. When he occasionally joked with the students, he still felt like a student. Every day, he played Chinese chess with Chen Zuan and the rest in the laboratory. He still posted unreliable bits of wisdom on his page and earned distress points from his students. But he did not post anything today. He did not play Chinese chess in the laboratory either. Chen Zuan, Chang Qiuqiao, and Chao Qingxi silently looked at Lu Shu. He was standing by the window of the laboratory and spacing out. It was as if he was thinking about something very important. This was unusual. So unusual that Chen Zuan and the rest started to panic. They were afraid that Lu Shu would suddenly create trouble that would kill them. Lu Shu did create trouble, but he did not plan to kill people. Chen Zuan suddenly felt that today's Lu Shu was very different from the usual Lu Shu. They also suddenly realized that Lu Shu had always been growing and had always been changing. No matter whether it was a good change or a bad change, the once selfish young man had now gained an understanding of the world. Perhaps Lu Shu had never changed. He had never been selfish to the point of immorality. He was not truly cold-blooded either. He just did what he felt was right. This time, he had decided to accept the warmth of the world and repay it with warmth. 2 years had passed since the start of the magically rich era. In these 2 years, Lu Shu had met many people and experienced a life that he had never thought about before in the past. This time, he wanted to fulfill the promise he had made. He wanted to fight for the heavenly network. At first, the students did not realize the importance of his words. When they heard that Lu Shu wanted to talk about what had happened at the collection of gods, their first reaction was, Was Lord Lu at the collection of gods back then as well? Does Lord Lu know who the ninth heavenly king is? The portrait of the ninth heavenly king and Lu Xiu were beside each other. All the students had realized this. After all, it was the biggest piece of gossip within the heavenly network. The heavenly kings were top combat powers in the heavenly network. Everyone knew that there was the ninth heavenly king, but they did not know who the heavenly king was. This piqued their curiosity. This was like some advertisements in the past that deliberately censored its content. A cloth then covered the countdown timer. Everyone had to wait for 9 days before the advertisement underneath was revealed. Eventually, the entire city started to talk about the advertisement. Everyone's curiosity had been piqued. The ninth heavenly king. The most mysterious heavenly king. The answer was about to be revealed. Would Lord Lu tell them the truth? Lu Shu scanned the audience and calmly said, "Back then, the collection of gods issued an arrest warrant for me. They wanted to use the deep sea white sand to trade for my life. Zhang Yutong found me immediately. I worked together with Yu Mingyu to pretend that I was dead. During that period, I could not appear in public. Furthermore, I am someone who will take revenge. If you have a warrant against me, I will kill you." Thus, I went to the collection of gods and started a new life with a new identity. That was my first time being a spy. But it couldn't be considered a success. My cover was always mysteriously blown. Lu Shu helplessly laughed. Zhang Yutong, who had just arrived, became unhappy when he heard this. "Were you not ashamed of your identity being exposed?" But Zhang Yutong did not say anything. He silently looked at the young man on the stage. He seemed more composed, as if he was prepared to accept the various dazzling glories. Lu Shu continued. "Back then, I met a female colleague who was responsible for helping me. Of course, I can't reveal her name. She was an ordinary person, but her words touched me. She said that there were some things that people just had to do. Later on, I found out that Takashima Tairatsu was planning to sacrifice the members of the collection of gods so that he could advance. Thus, I infiltrated the base that he had built and tried to sabotage his plans. Lu Shu romanticized the situation. After all, he could reveal that he had wanted to steal magical stones. Back then, I was alone with no support. It was difficult to sabotage Takashima's plan alone. After all, he was almost a Class A. Back then, a Class C expert tried to attack me, but I did not notice. That was when Lu Xiu protected me. Lu Shu looked as if he was reminiscing the past. To be honest, I still don't understand. If he continued to hide, he had a very high chance of survival. But he chose to protect me. He used his blood and his swords to buy me time. After that, I could not understand why he had done that for a very long time. Was there anything in this world that was more important than one's own life? Maybe I was too selfish, thus I could not come up with an answer. Till now, I still feel that one's own life is the most important. But I also understand that there are some things that people just have to do. The students suddenly realized that they had been thinking of the wrong thing. While the 9th Heavenly King and Lu Xiu killed Takashima Tairatsu, Lord Lu was not an observer. He had taken part in it. They had wanted to ask Lu Xiu who the 9th Heavenly King was. Now, Lu Xiu had revealed the answer. Lu Xiu felt as if he had been relieved of a heavy load. He had finally talked about this buried past. He had provided the best remarks for Lu Xiu as a participant of the incident. Zhong Yutong silently looked at Lu Xiu. He was very clear that the battle had been classified because Lu Xiu did not want to accept the position of Heavenly King. Lu Xiu knew this as well. Thus, when Lu Xiu talked about this himself, this meant that Lu Xiu had already made his preparations. Lu Xiu smiled. This is my last lesson. I hope that all of you have gained something from my lessons. A student suddenly asked, Heavenly King Lu, where are you going? Are you going to stop teaching? When Lu Xiu heard the title of Heavenly King Lu, he was dumbfounded. This was his first time hearing this name. He was not used to it. He thought about the danger that waited for him at the Changbai Mountains. Suddenly, he started to talk to himself. I feel that you will have a moment in your life when you tell yourself, this is me, and this is my decision. This was what Lu Xiu had learned after his conversation with Lu Xiaoyu yesterday. The solution to problems in life was not to run away. It was to make the problem disappear, or kill the person who created the problem. That day, the portrait of the 9th Heavenly King beside Lu Xiu that had been a black silhouette was finally replaced with Lu Xiu's portrait. Lu Xiu was smiling in the picture. His smile was as bright as the sun. Chapter 802, Walnut Tree. Before Lu Xiu's portrait had been hung along the corridor, many people had guessed who the black silhouette was. The issue of the 9th Heavenly King was always brought up, as he had killed a fake Class A, Takashima Tairatsu. The appearance of the 9th Heavenly King had caused the collection of gods to fall from a top-rate organization into a state of disarray. It was not easy to cause a large organization to collapse. First, their leader, who had the strongest combat power in the organization, had to be killed. Thereafter, their foundation had to be destroyed. Lu Xiu had done all of these things. The strength of the collection of gods had fallen significantly. They would need to spend a few years recovering before they could return to the world stage. Most importantly, for some reason, although the collection of gods had been destroyed by the 9th Heavenly King, a very big reason for their collapse was because of the collection of gods itself. For example, Takashima Tairatsu had killed more people than Lu Xiu. Even then, they were enemies. After the collection of gods had been rebuilt by a girl called Sakurai Yeiko, people were surprised that she had obtained the support of the collection of gods, but the 9th Heavenly King did not seem to hate her. The collection of gods had wanted to send an arrest warrant for the 9th Heavenly King to the Darkness Kingdom, but this had been rejected by Sakurai Yeiko. The conservatives had questioned Sakurai about who the 9th Heavenly King was. Sakurai knew what had happened. She had a short interaction with the deities at the base. Thus, everyone felt that it was likely that Sakurai knew who the ninth heavenly king was. But Sakurai kept it a secret. She did not answer anything regarding the ninth heavenly king. But after that battle, some of Sakurai's trusted subordinates knew that Sakurai always had several thousand yen in her wallet. But she had never spent the money. Sakurai no longer needed to pay for anything wherever she went. A wallet was an insignificant existence to her. Later on, Sakurai stopped carrying credit cards around. But she still had money in her wallet. No one knew that the money was the salary that Sakurai had received from Lu Shu. She felt that the several thousand yen was the cleanest money she had earned in her lifetime. There were times when Sakurai felt that it would be more appropriate for her to be an assassin, instead of the leader of an organization. Perhaps this was not a life that she wanted. Thus, if she had to leave the collection of gods one day, she would not take everything away. She would only take her small salary. It was special to her. Everyone could understand why the collection of gods ceased all their activities. After all, they had lost their strongest expert. It would not be wise for them to challenge the heavenly network, but since when was the collection of gods this wise? No matter what, the ninth heavenly king of the heavenly network was a mystery in the realm of cultivation. It was as if the ninth heavenly king had disappeared after what had happened at the collection of gods. Even the members of the heavenly network did not know who the ninth heavenly king was. But today, this mystery had been solved. Everyone already knew that Lord Lu was amazing. After all, Lord Lu often annoyed people. If he was not amazing, he would have been killed a long time ago. With his impressive military achievements, it was impossible to not give in to him. The teams from the other cultivation colleges all prayed that they did not have to face the Luotian Cultivation College. Lu Shu had quietly left the Luotian Cultivation College. But the discussions about him did not cease. He had calmly came to class. He did not directly reveal that he was the ninth heavenly king. But the story he had calmly told had proven everything. Chen Zuan, Cheng Qiuqiao and the rest also did not know that Lu Shu had gone to the collection of gods. But everyone who was familiar with Lu Shu had guessed so, especially Lu Li. Back then, many people had sent flowers to Lu Shu's door and lit candles. It was worth pondering about what Lu Shu had done when he faked his death. But back then, no one believed that Lu Shu was the ninth heavenly king. After all, Lu Shu had killed a fake Class A at the collection of gods. This time, Lu Shu did not bring Chen Zuan and Cheng Qiuqiao with him. Because, it was far too dangerous. The controller glared menacingly at their keyboard, as if they had already calculated this. Lu Shu had brought them to the Kunlun Mountains because they could handle the level of danger there. They could just run away. But this time, he could not run away. If he ran away, what would happen to the rest of the members of the heavenly network? Lu Shu was not talented when it came to commanding others. He was not a genius in military affairs. He had not received any training either. The only time he had led a group was the Flood of Bronze. Thus, Lu Shu felt that in order for him to inflict the most damage on the secret practitioners, the large organizations, and the controller was not to fight like a soldier. It was to hunt them down. He could not expose his whereabouts. If his whereabouts were exposed, the people around him might be in trouble. Thus, Lu Shu had to hide. Lu Shu disappeared. No one knew where he had gone. It was as if Lu Shu knew from the very beginning that if he did not want the controller to control his movements, the first thing he had to do was to disappear. He was exposed, while the controller was in the dark. Now, everyone would walk into the dark together. We will see who will be killed. The courtyard at Luihai Lane in the capital had been rebuilt. The courtyard, which had once displayed the vicissitudes of life, suddenly took on a completely new look. Shi Xuejin looked melancholic as he stood in the courtyard. My father left behind a lot of things, but the only thing left now is that walnut tree. Shi Xuejin was not used to it. Although the facilities in the courtyard had been upgraded, but there was no place like his old home. The entire courtyard had been renewed. For some reason, it felt as if something was missing. Sure, Xuejin patted the stem of the walnut tree. Walnut tree, walnut tree. There's only you to accompany me. You can't be like the others who have no conscience. If they say that they want to destroy old things, they will. Do you think I'm right, walnut tree? Ting was beside him. His expression darkened. Give way. Sure, Xuejin, who had seemed like a scholar, suddenly shouted, Ting, if you cut down this walnut tree today, I will not cook for you for an entire year. Hao Jichao and the rest, who were standing around, felt very awkward. Sure, Xuejin was not usually like this. He was always kind and gentle, like a scholar. To be honest, they were also very curious. Why did Ting want to cut down this walnut tree? It was better to let it grow, right? Last year, Heavenly King Luo even treated everyone to walnuts. Freshly picked walnuts had a green skin around them. One needed to cut off the skin and air-dry the walnut before it could be eaten. Sure, Xuejin was the busiest when the walnut tree bore fruit. He did not even read his books. He would be busy cutting off the skin. When Hao Jichao saw how Sure Xuejin was, he could not bear it anymore. Then let's not cut down the tree. Ting coldly said, pull him away. Cut down the tree. Sure, Xuejin let out a terrible shriek as he was being pulled away. Ting, we are still not done. Chapter 803, The Real War Has Begun. Ting did not go to the Changbai Mountains. Instead, he returned to the courtyard to cut down the tree. Others could not quite understand why he had decided to do so. Hao Jichao and the rest were dumbfounded. They were helpless when they saw Heavenly King Sure hug the walnut tree, not willing to let go. Sure, Xuejin was an ordinary person. If they forcibly pulled him away, they might injure him. Typically, when they came to report for duty, they would be able to eat the food that Sure Xuejin had cooked. Although Sure Xuejin was an ordinary person, he was very popular in the Heavenly Network. After all, everyone had to learn the yin-yang kinship of the three, which 99% of the Heavenly Network members had practiced, which had been developed by none other than Sure Xuejin. Suddenly, Sure Xuejin said, if you walk on that path, you will surely regret it. We have so many people. We might not lose. You don't have to take such a gamble. Ting calmly looked at him. Since when have I and Ting been overly cautious? Sure, Xuejin reprimanded him. You are my father's only successor. The sword techniques of the Sure family cannot be lost. I have passed down the sword techniques to Chao Qingxi. Relax. I will not use it unless I absolutely have to. He looked at said to Hao Jichao and the rest, what are you doing? Cut down the tree. Hao Jichao and the rest suddenly realized that this walnut tree might be different from the rest. Back then when Ting had broken through the boundary of the Seal of Lands, the entire courtyard had been destroyed. But this walnut tree remained unharmed. Back then, Ting had been too occupied to control his strength. If he had been able to control his strength, the courtyard might still be standing. That means that even under that immense power, this walnut tree had survived. Cut. Ting exclaimed with a calm and dignified tone. Sure, Xuejin heard the resolution in Ting's tone and slowly stopped struggling. Sure, Xuejin did not see them cut down the tree. He ran into his study. I will find a way to resolve this. Bang. The door of the study was closed. Hao Jichao and the rest suddenly realized that this walnut tree might be hiding a secret that might be harmful to the Heavenly Network. Ting had to do this because their manpower at the Changbai Mountains was decreasing. The large organizations constantly tested the morals of the Heavenly Network. Conflicts broke out every day. Many overseas practitioners constantly entered the Changbai Mountains. The massive mountain had turned into a massive battlefield. The roots of the trees had been stained red with blood. Ting wanted to obtain something inside the walnut tree to give himself another choice. Sure, Xuejin knew what Ting wanted. When he realized that he could not stop him, he immersed himself in books. He wanted to find a solution for Ting. He did not ask Ting about anything else. Hao Jichao and the rest finally understood that the reason Shi Xuejin did not allow them to cut down the tree was not because he was reluctant to part with it. It was just an excuse. Hao Jichao raised his axe and aimed at the walnut tree. Bang! It sounded as if his axe had come in contact with gold. Use your full strength, said Ting. This time, Hao Jichao used his standard long sword to cut down the tree. Even the long sword was broken. A person behind him silently passed him another sword. Hao Jichao tried again. By the time that he used the fifth sword, the walnut tree started to crack from the inside. Everyone held their breath in concentration. They wanted to see what was inside the tree. They realized that there was a long and narrow box. It was black and made out of metal. Ting silently took the box and used his sleeve to wipe it. He looked like he was reminiscing. Ting looked at Hao Jichao and the rest. Do not reveal what had happened today. He looked at the fallen walnut tree. It was July, the height of summer. Numerous walnuts had started to grow on the tree. Usually, Shi Xuejin would take care of the tree. Thus, the tree had been flourishing. Look at the walnuts. What a pity, said Ting. Heavenly King Nya. Hao Jichao hesitated before saying, the situation has not worsened till that extent. Ting quietly looked at Hao Jichao. You don't have to worry too much about this. Go to the Changbai Mountains tomorrow. If you discover Lu Shu's whereabouts, inform me. Okay. Hao Jichao said, but you know that it will be very hard for us to find a heavenly king if he is determined to hide his whereabouts. Think about his personality. Search from there. Ting calmly said, do you not know what he is like? How many practitioners in the world are as lowly as him? Suddenly, a member of the heavenly network behind Hao Jichao started to shout abuses. You are the lowly one. Your entire family is lowly. Ting was silent. Hao Jichao was dumbfounded. Everyone expressionlessly looked at that heavenly network member. Ting's expression darkened. From Ting's distress, plus 666. From Hao Jichao's. Where is Wu Jin? What did you do to him? Hao Jichao asked. Everyone knew that the Wu Jin in front of them was not the real Wu Jin. As for who he was, there was no need to guess. Lu Shu returned to his original appearance and stretched. He's sleeping. Ting asked, why are you in the capital? I wanted to see how bad the consequences are after you were struck by lightning, said Lu Shu. He had come here to see whether Ting could still attack. But he had to get others to do something as minor as cutting down a walnut tree. This way, Lu Shu understood. He would not believe what was on the forum unless he saw it for himself. Indeed, Ting could no longer attack. As for what was inside the walnut tree, Lu Shu did not care much about it. No one could stay away from this conflict. As the boss of the heavenly network, Ting had to answer the call of duty. If Shi Xuejin was unable to convince him, what could Lu Shu do? I'm going to the Changbai Mountains. Don't use that unless you absolutely have to. Although I have no idea what that is. Lu Shu suddenly paused and said, there's still me. Lu Shu did not finish his sentence. Who knows whether Ting would eventually need to attack. But since he had chosen to do so, he would first bear the heavy responsibility. Hao Jichao and the rest looked at one another helplessly. When Lu Shu spoke, it was as if their breath was being suppressed by Lu Shu's aura. At that moment, Lu Shu casually walked to the walnut tree and kept it in the seal of lands. The walnuts on the tree seemed quite plump, anyway. Nie Ting could not attack him either. After he was done, Lu Shu turned and left. He was afraid that Nie Ting would demand him to return the tree. Hao Jichao was stunned. Heavenly King Lu, you really seized every opportunity. Nie Ting expressionlessly looked at Hao Jichao. Now you know how to find him based on his personality, right? Yes, yes. From Nie Ting's distress, plus 199. Nie Ting looked at Lu Shu, but did not ask him to return the walnut tree. He knew the responsibilities that he had taken up. So what if he gave him a walnut tree? They were going to the east. This was the real war. Chapter 804, The Hunt, Part 1. The range of the war was restricted to the Chengbai Mountains as there was a bottom line agreed upon by all organizations, that they should not affect the greater community. They had made their stance clear. We were here only for the ancient treasures hidden under the sword formation valleys and nothing else. They had a point. The treasure of heaven and earth belonged to anyone capable, so why should the heavenly network keep all the good things to themselves? Anyway, did they not compete for resources in overseas remains as well? But all of them were also aware that it was favorable to them if the war was not allowed to spread to the neighboring villages. Some of them had even imposed strict regulations to prevent secret practitioners from trespassing the borders of the mountains. What if some of them murdered and robbed Chinese villages? That would make Nie Ting go mad. In any case, a small-scale war was acceptable as everyone was longing for the secrets and treasures of the ancient clan. But no one was interested in an all-out battle as no organization intended to destroy themselves along with Nie Ting. In fact, the organizations were also trying to tone down the impact of the war so as not to upset Nie Ting. The organizations set up a union headquarters at Port Artyom, but they were fighting for the power of speech as well. In front of strong organizations like the Department of Faith Theory and the Phoenix Society, the local tyrant Red Sparrows had no alternative but to yield to them. Due to the previous battle with the White Bears, the Red Sparrows had lost many of its core fighters and they had no Class A's to begin with. On a side note, the death of the leader of the White Bears still remained a mystery to the Red Sparrows. When they were planning to get rid of this threat at the cost of their own men's lives, the leader's dead body was suddenly uncovered in the wilderness one day. At that time, the Red Sparrows suspected it was done by a hidden local master. But based on the traces left at the battle scene, it seemed an easy fight. Moreover, there were only 2 people's footprints found at the site. One belonged to the White Bear's leader and the other seemed to be of a child's. The situation at the Port Artyom headquarters was pretty amusing too. The various organizations refused to move into the office building because they were worried that Nie Ting might fly over unexpectedly and wipe out everyone in the building. Thus, it would be wiser to scatter apart. Furthermore, many organization leaders had gone missing upon arrival at Port Artyom. No one knew where they were hiding. In fact, they had put in much effort into this battle. Firstly, they had to find a valid reason for coming, and they cited that it was only fair for them to enter the Chengbai Mountains because the Heavenly Network had pillaged resources from overseas remains as well, for example the relic of the Kochang remains. Then, they had to keep an eye on their own members and make sure they would not cause trouble on the territories of the Heavenly Network. Their reason was straightforward as the entire world, including people of the Heavenly Network, would be doomed if the Heavenly Network got pissed off and wanted to start an all-out war right there. In order to ensure everything was under control, the organizations had only sent in a small number of troops to exhaust the force of the Heavenly Network, instead of launching large-scale battles. Nevertheless, it had also been proven that group battle strategies would not work well for practitioners as it would weaken individual powers. Lastly, the organization leaders had to seek secret shelters so as not to be located and killed by the Heavenly Network. Furthermore, the Heavenly Network had their spies all across the world and no organization could be confident that all their members were trustworthy. Besides, the union of large organizations was not united after all, because they were only bonded together by the obvious interest. Yet, each of them had their own hidden agendas as well. Afterwards, the situation became even more messy after the Phoenix Society and the Department of Faith Theory successfully secured their leadership positions. Although the Heavenly Network was outnumbered as they literally stood against the entire world, all of its members were in it together and their sense of organizational discipline far surpassed that of the World Organizations Union. At first, the Union tested the water with Class Cs and secret practitioners because it was unlikely that the battle would intensify all of a sudden. But in a small-scale battle a few days ago, a slaughter led by Yu Mingyu and Li Xiao broke out in the forests. Few would have survived the fight if the Phoenix Society had not secretly attacked Nalan K, which resulted in the Heavenly Network retreating back to a defensible position. It was also then when it became clear to the large organizations that the Heavenly Network had no intention to waste their time with them because they had sent in their most elite team upon the first encounter. Moreover, the Heavenly Network's stance was firm and clear, and they were ready for the battle when other organizations were not prepared yet. As a result, the professional fighters of the various organizations had to jump straight into the battle before all of their secret practitioners were wiped out. At this moment, all commoners had been evacuated from the Changbai Mountains as the place was now teeming with aggressive practitioners. The front lines of the Heavenly Network and foreign organizations were closely interlocked and casualties could happen anytime. Unfortunately, the Heavenly Network was in a disadvantageous position due to the drastic difference in the number of fighters. Slowly but inevitably, the front line was pushed back into the central area of the Changbai Mountains. At the moment, the east side of the Tiger Back One had been fully occupied by foreign organizations. Every night, campfires would be set up on the slope. New faces joined in every day while old ones perished in the wild forests. A team of secret practitioners led by a master from the Red Sparrows was navigating through the forests. It had been 2 days since they sneaked into the Changbai Mountains. Luckily for them, though, they had not encountered any members of the Heavenly Network yet. The Changbai mountain range spanned 310 kilometers in a north-south direction and 200 kilometers east-west. Thus, it was indeed a slim possibility for the troops to meet on this vast land. The team reached an open space in the woods. The team leader glanced up at the sky and said, "Let's set up our campsite here tonight. Be alarmed and watch out for enemies in hiding." Members of the Heavenly Network are all experienced soldiers and their flying sword attacks are the most difficult to defend against. Wait, we have 2 men missing. At this instant, he saw with his own eyes a pair of arms reached out from behind the trees and locked one of his men by his neck. Then, with a twist, the man's neck snapped like a fried dough twist. The team consisted of 10 people. But they had lost 3 before they could even see their enemies. Suddenly, rotten leaves rustled on the ground. To their shock, they saw hundreds of gray threads sweeping across the floor. Chapter 805, The Hunt, Part 2. To foreigners, flying swords were a symbol of supreme power in the Heavenly Network and only people of Class C and below would use close combat methods. Thus, they had scattered their groups so as not to be sniped by flying swords. Furthermore, all of them would be warned about the fatality of flying swords before they entered the forests. But the attacking strategy of the enemy they were facing now was different from what they had expected. There were no flying swords, and the gray threads on the ground looked as threatening as a nest of snakes. Subconsciously, the team leader knew that his men could hardly survive this. But their enemy was still smiling, as if he had not taken them seriously. When he was about to run, he realized that his escape route had been blocked by a dense formation of gray threads. Lu Shu smiled. "You are the last group alive. Tell me about the campsites at the Tiger Back. I'll grant you an easy death if you give me what I want." Lu Shu had visited the Heavenly Network campsite before going into the forests. There, he saw countless casualties and comrades' bodies awaiting cremation. Thus, he had no intention to spare the life of any foreign practitioners he ran into. Lu Shu was furious. He saw Li Xiao and Nalan K from afar, but he did not show himself. At the moment, he kept his own appearance with simple camouflage on his face. He looked like just another normal soldier of the Heavenly Network. In any case, he could not afford to expose himself. Thus, he had to ensure his own safety by hiding in the shadows. Therefore, before figuring out the power level of his opponents, Lu Shu had used another way of attack on this team instead of his typical strategies. He knew that the party he was fighting against was probably watching the battle from behind the curtain, and that he would be in serious trouble if his hidden enemies had their eyes on him. But then Lu Shu realized that this kind of scouting troops was an easy kill. Thus, he could exterminate them effortlessly without using any of his trump cards up his sleeve. All of a sudden, the Sparrow Shade materialized from his celestial map after Lu Shu had confirmed that there were no traps nearby. Now, the lives of the team lay in Lu Shu's hands. Surprisingly, though, he was equipped with an instant translation device. Was he really here to fight? He did not look that tensed up as the other soldiers. "Who are you?" the leader from the Red Sparrows asked, trying to buy them some time. He knew that there was a slim hope that they might live if their comrades 1 kilometer away could come to rescue them in time. After all, every team was connected by telecommunications to ensure those in danger could report their situations promptly to their support teams. Lu Shu grinned. "Are you waiting for your comrades to rescue you?" Sadly, they were wiped out half an hour ago. Fear seeped through the atmosphere. This team was totally unaware of when their comrades were killed. Suddenly, the leader felt a piercing pain in his legs. He looked down to see 2 gray strands sinuating across his calves. Effortlessly, the sharp blades of the Sparrow Shade penetrated his spirit chi armor like a cutter on a piece of paper. During this period of time, a large influx of distress points was registered on Lu Shu's end. As expected, fear was the best nutrient for the celestial map. But it was hard to collect fear as Lu Shu was not a serial killed after all. "I will repeat myself one last time. Tell me about the tigerback campsites." "Well, how about this? Let's do a fair information exchange. You'll tell me what you know, and I'll tell you mine," Lu Shu said. He was not good at interrogations by torture because he found it too cruel. Nevertheless, he could still be cruel if the situation called on him. The expert from the Red Sparrows collapsed to the ground on his knees after losing his balance. Struggling, he squeezed out a sentence. "Tell me first how many Class Bs there are in the Heavenly Network. Then I will tell you how many we have at the campsite." With a short pause, Lu Shu replied, "We have 1,000. From. After an awkward silence, Lu Shu decided to give up. "Forget it. It's really not my forte to exchange information. So, I will have to trouble you to send regards to my Heavenly Network comrades when you see them in death. You may tell them that I, Lu Shu, the 9th Heavenly King, will avenge them." The leader was in shock. "So you didn't even intend to get any information from us?" The night grew heavier. In the deserted forests, the howling of wild animals pierced through the silence of the night. In fact, the extent of animal mutation in the Changbai Mountains was much greater than that in other regions. But all of those mutated beasts had migrated to other places after tens of thousands of practitioners invaded their habitats. As the Heavenly Network team quietly navigated through the forests, the leader suddenly gestured for everyone to stop. At that instant, the 10-people team seemed to have become frozen in the moonlight. All of them studied their surroundings alertedly. Their leader had stopped because he saw a fire through the slits of leaves. The leader made a few silent hand gestures to scatter the team into an attacking formation. Then, the 10 people immediately fanned out and encircled the fire. They moved in an unhurried manner and kept an appropriate distance from one another. This was a strategic plan as the fire could be a bait and they might be stepping into a trap. However, it seemed that there was no ambush. The leader made another hand gesture and the team closed in towards the fire again. Yet, to their surprise, there was only one boy with camouflage on his face. Moreover, there were over 20 dead bodies of foreign practitioners around him. At this moment, the leader suddenly noticed a gray thread hanging menacingly above him from within the trees. Lu Shu looked up and smiled at the people around him. "Come and warm yourselves, fellow comrades." It was a summer night, but the temperature on top of the mountains was still relatively cold, coupled with the cooling moisture in the air. The leader was hesitant. "Who are you? And who are they?" "You don't need to know my name," said Lu Shu, smiling. "These guys came to my fire. I've killed them and a few other teams, but there are more in the eastern side of the forest." The leader drew a startled breath. The boy was attracting foreign practitioners to himself like moths to a fire. Furthermore, he was fighting alone.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.